You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody, it's James. Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. And today we have another James with me who's from the East Coast and does stand-up. And he's been on the podcast before. Luke was on, I think, when he was on before. But we're going to talk about some cool stuff because there was a video that he posted on YouTube that I thought was really cool where he got licensed to be a street performer. And the reason I really reached out to him is because when David and Luke and I went to New York a couple years ago for it was a film festival thing that we got to go do. I remember being in, because we stayed in New Jersey and we had to ride over to New York. And being in New Jersey, there was like a thing you could be a performer on the subway or something, and you could like file for it, I think is what it was. And so I remember thinking like, oh, I wonder why comedians don't do this. This would be a great idea. You can practice your set, you can get paid some money, and then you can go into the city and do, spots at night. So during the day, you could actually work stuff. And James did it. So please welcome James McAliney, who's a great comedian, YouTuber, all that stuff. James, welcome to the podcast.
Again. Thank you for having me, James. Yeah. You want to talk about street performing? I'll say here's the quick answer about why more comedians don't do it is because it's really hard and it sucks most of the time.
But doing spots over and over again, or even doing open mics sucks a lot. Like doing open mics sucks. Like it's not, you're not getting the real feedback. Yes, you're getting people in the room who may laugh or may not laugh, but a joke that may not work in an open mic doesn't mean it's not going to work in front of a crowd, right? Because we as comedians have different tastes than the general public. So I would think that would be more fun because you could work on crowd work stuff. You could do some jokes if you got enough people around. You could do some of your set, and then you would be a good way of you of like working out being nervous talking to just random people, which is the hard part of crowd work.
You're right. So there's much like stand-up comedy, it's like you need a certain type of different type of combinations of factors to make it work. I think the reason why like performing on the subway is hard because like in my video, like I think I found like the most ideal spot, and the most ideal spot to street perform is super quiet. Like the quieter the better, much like a stand-up comedy show. It's like if people are being loud, like quieter the better. And then people who are not in a hurry, just ambling by, who will stop and listen to you. Whereas like on transit, like, they're trying to get their train, they're hurrying up, there's loud trains coming and going. So that can be a difficult spot. So it's difficult in that sense. Like, I don't know. Yeah, there used to be like back in the day, there used to be like performers who would perform in like Washington Square Park in New York City. Yeah. I haven't tried that. I mean, that's so nerve-wracking and nervous. I'll say like the video I made, I cut out, like I tried that like 4 other times after that. And it can get messy. It can get messy. I didn't put the messy parts.
No, I want to hear that. Well, let's hear the messy part. Cause that's the thing is like, there could be good and bad parts of this, right? Of like, it seemed like you had, I mean, that was a short video. I'm sure if you did a longer, video, and you a day of you doing this and see how it turns out, like go out there and say, today I'm going to do this for my job and see how much I can make in tips or whatever and stuff. And then just kind of go through it and see what happens. Yeah. What are the goods and the bads, the pros and cons here?
Yeah. So the video is just me doing it for the first time. And I did it for a total of an hour, and like everything went as good as possible the first time. Which is great. Just finding people, talking to people, trying to connect to people. And once you do that, people will like give you money. The thing with that is it does, like, first off, it attracts like crazies, it attracts weird people, especially like Atlantic City Boardwalk, but I'm sure New York City, other places too. They'll just like, there was people who, I don't know, were like, on drugs or just like looking for trouble, would like come and just hang out in front of you. And you're like, how do I get rid of these people? People just looking for a fight, like come up to you and scream like or whatever. Most people were cool. Some people I like did jokes to were like, one guy was like, he's like, I got all day for bees.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I like said some like quick response back by like, oh, then he got really mad. And I'm like, oh, that was not the right decision. So he just came up, stood in my face, and I just stood there and I was like, I don't want any trouble, sir. I don't want any trouble, sir. But I didn't want to back down because I didn't like, I don't know if it was my ego or whatever, but I didn't want to back down and show weakness, but I also didn't want to cause trouble. So there's a lot of that. It's
Could
just
that
hard.
just be New Jersey? Could that just be New Jersey? Because
I think
they
it's
seem to have that attitude.
yeah. I mean, it depends. I think that is like definitely like the trade-off is like it's like, you know, more like more places where like everyone is, like New York City or the boardwalk. You definitely get more riffraff. But if you go to like richer, nicer areas, they like the cops will shut you down more, or the laws are much stricter. So it's like a trade-off like that. Yeah, I was talking to like other street performers who do it for a job, and they're like, yeah, you got to like have this narrative where you hook them in and stuff like that. And there's people who do street performing, but most of it is like acrobat tricks, or like some guy was explaining, if you keep like drawing a line, they're like, why is he drawing a line? And they'll be hooked in more like that. But you're right, it's a very unexplored area, and it's hard to like find people who do this. I was trying to find anyone. Mostly I was talking to like magicians and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it just is because it's like comedy. It's like one of my videos is doing a surprise comedy show. We just showed up at a restaurant
That's right.
and just did comedy that like everyone was like, what is this? There can be a little bit like that because they don't know they're coming for comedy. So they're like, what, this guy is roasting me? What, I didn't expect that. Or you try and do crowd work and they're like, you know, it's just a very strange thing for people. But I did this before like TikTok was filled with crowd work. So maybe it's a lot easier now. I don't know. It's a good point.
That's a good. That is my only beef with TikTok is like I see a lot of more comedians when I go do shows do crowd work instead of actual sets
Yeah.
because they're recording it to try to. And I'm like, but you're not. I mean, yes, I get like you're gonna be like, oh, I have all these followers, but when you go to do a show, you're not gonna have material to do. You're just gonna be relying on because you haven't been doing any material. You know, I have a friend of mine that's a great comedian who all he does now is crowd work and record it to put it on TikTok and social media and stuff or whatever. And he has a lot of followers, but I'm like, all right, now what set are you going to do? Oh no, I'm just going to talk to the crowd. Well, that's not.
Yeah. Dude,
I don't know.
I need like a month's worth of TikTok. I need to post 2 a week or whatever it is, you know?
Yep. That's exactly
Dude.
that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, it seems, bro. It's you know, yeah, it's some people are just good with it. Like I take forever to like I have long form stories. I take forever to write them. Like I'm
Right.
and you know, I'm not going to just put them on TikTok, but yeah, some people it's just like, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And yeah, I don't know.
It's rough. I don't. That's a weird part about comedy of comedy where we're at now is like, and then now because so many people put crowd work stuff on TikTok, people come to shows and then when you say anything that could sound like a question that the audience can respond to, they will respond now, and you're like, oh, that's not what I was trying to do. I've had that happen a couple of times where I was like, no, that's not what we're doing here. But now you have to kind of do a little more crowd work because people are expecting because that's what they see now. They see that and they go, oh, that's what comedy is now. Is like I can talk to it. Like I did a set the other day and we didn't know when the headliner was going to be there. And so my buddy was the feature and I was the MC and host everything. And he's like, just keep going. And if you need to go into crowd work. And I did a joke and somebody laughed about, it was like about my kids and bullying or whatever that I normally do.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, you like bullying? And then like, I got into this whole like thing with a crowd about bullying. And there happened to be like a guy who was like a school counselor, school psychologist who like, yeah, you know, bullying can be good or bad or whatever. So I was like, oh, it could be good. He's like, yeah, some kids should be bullied. And I was like, exactly. Some kids should be. It was so like, it really like opened a lot of things and it was fun. I wish I would have like video recorded that set because it was awesome. I have the audio recording. It was hilarious, but to have like people engage, they're now trying to engage you. And I see it too, like where I did a show and there was like a really like famous comedian that was on the stage. And every time he would say anything, it kind of sounded like it could be asking for a response for the audience, people would yell out stuff, and I was like, "Oh man, this is not going to go well," or whatever.
Yeah,
so it was.
Yeah, people are more like literate, I guess. Like I notice a lot more like people in the audience say, like, "What are you trying to crowd work me?" or "What is that crowd work?" And I'm like, "You're not supposed to know what that word is." You're like,
it's our secret language.
Yeah, like some of the magic to crowd work is like I get crowd work done great is the most amazing thing, but some of the magic was like people thought like it was more like mysterious. It's not as
Yeah.
mysterious as it used to be. And also, what was I going to say? Yeah, uh, it used to, what I like to do, like before TikTok, was like you used to be able to get people to like admit more like secretive stuff.
Yeah.
And now that they know it's going to be on like YouTube or whatever, it's like you're not, like, I had one person tell me how I was like, I would like admit to like some crimes that I did. I mean, not bad crimes, but just
Right.
like,
Right.
yeah, my insurance company, I committed insurance fraud. There's this whole story to that or whatever. But and then I'm like, so what are some crimes you guys committed? And one guy was like, yeah, I set my next door neighbor's Corvette on fire. And then a lady next to it was like, oh my God, he's my AA sponsor. And he was like setting cars on fire or whatever. Um, yeah, that's like the great stuff that, like, that was always my favorite, is trying to get people to admit crimes because people are excited to talk about them.
Oh yeah, because they've held it in for so long. They've kept this secret, and now it's
Yeah,
like, oh, I can share it, and there's no repercussions.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty funny. There's a really great comedian, pretty famous, Jimmy Brogan, who all
Mm.
his stuff is crowd work. Like that's
Oh,
all he
really?
does. But
Yeah.
he doesn't have any written jokes. He doesn't do any written material. He just does. But he has like kind of scripted comebacks and stuff that he uses, or
Yeah.
scripted things he uses, but it's all crowd work. He just talks to the crowd and uses whatever they do to do certain things. I've seen him probably half a dozen times or so, and it's
Yeah.
always that same thing of like, what do you do? Where are you from? Blah, blah. And then he always has like something in the tank to be able to get it. And
Mm.
I've never seen him fumble. I haven't seen him fumble
Yeah.
because he's done it. That's all he does. So it's really interesting to watch it. But I'm worried that that's where we're gonna go as comedians. That people are gonna expect us to do more crowd work as opposed to sets, and it's gonna be weird unless you're like doing a amphitheater, right? And then you can't do
Yeah.
crowd work in an amphitheater. But at a club, that's gonna be the way to go. Now, after you did this for one day, did you feel like you could do crowd work better, or you feel like you should focus on crowd work more because you were gonna try this again at some point? Maybe like you did try it a few times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I did it. I did it like 5 or 6 times. I will say, just in general, the whole, and now I've gone back again, where now I'm like not really doing crowd work anymore. But like during the whole like outside comedy shows, COVID shutdown,
Yeah, yeah.
my crowd work got really good because like that was the only way to engage people in a lot of those situations,
Yeah.
and that was a little fun. But I'll say this about crowd work is, I like in cities. I think a lot of what we did discussing about people being more literate and expecting crowd work is more of a city thing. Like if you go outside the city, like an hour, like suburbs or more rural places, they don't. It's the same, they don't care. They're not on TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
They're just like a lot of people, like, idea of comedy is just like, oh, did you see the new Chris Rock special, or
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld? He's the best,
Yeah.
that's still everyone's go-to guy. So
Yeah.
it is interesting. I don't know what I think since we like last talked, we talked like almost I think more
I think it
than
was
two
like 2
years
years.
ago.
Yeah, it was a while. It's been a while. Sorry.
Yeah, no, no, no. I'm just like trying to figure out like the business of comedy, and I know you're like big into that.
Yeah.
You do a lot of that stuff, and so what I've been doing most recently is, and it's reflecting a lot of my videos, is trying to figure out how to make money from comedy. And basically what I've been doing is just producing all my own shows, reaching out to venues, booking the shows, and getting paid that money, baby.
Yeah. It's a headache
And
though. Being a producer is the biggest headache as a comedian can do, right? It's better for someone to say, "Hey, come do my show," or "Hey, we want to book you for this thing," than you having to really do that, because it means setting up the venue, selling the tickets, booking the talent. Then you have to be there on the show, and even though you want to perform, your mind is not in the performance space often because you're thinking about, okay,
yeah,
who's going on next? Is this comedian here? You know, how's it going in there? Did we sell enough tickets? Does anyone need seats? Is there people getting drinks and this and like you're thinking of all the things. So
yeah,
I love producing shows. I hate producing shows that I'm going to be on because then I can't focus on the show. So
yeah,
what I'm trying to do is work with like somebody else to who's better at producing and doesn't want to be a comedian who wants to put stuff together, and then me being a comedian and taking the comedy contacts I have and information and putting those two things together and kind of working together on something. And
Yeah.
so that's going to be my wife, because she's great at like all the logistics
Oh,
stuff. And
good. Well,
she has
that's great.
yeah, she has
Yeah.
no interest in being a comedian whatsoever. She wants to
Yeah.
be. She actually wants to be like a manager at some point. I think she's like,
Yeah.
I should be your manager. And I was like, all right, we'll get there. Like, it takes time to
Yeah.
get to that point.
You got to
No, it's
yourself
not like
first.
that. But it's just a lot of pain. Like, you know this from booking shows, reaching out to
Yeah.
venues. It's a pain, and so I don't want to
Uh-huh.
put that on her right now.
Yeah.
Especially because we still have kids at home or whatever. When the kids leave and go to college or whatever, then
Mm.
fine, let's do your thing, and we
Yeah.
can do whatever. But that's my only issue with producing shows.
Oh.
It can't be a good way to make income. And what are you doing? Monthly shows, weekly shows? Like, what's your kind of your thing that you're doing?
Anything, yeah. Yeah. I too now weekly is more of a city thing.
Yeah.
Which I haven't figured out really how to make money in the city yet. I think it's a lot harder because there's
Yeah.
way more competition. But yeah, I'll do monthly and quarterly shows. I mean, I'll do anything, but what I recommend doing most is either a monthly show or a quarterly show and try and make money there. Yeah, everything you said is true about it being a nightmare. It's hard. It's a lot of that stuff. But like, honestly, like, that's kind of where the business is going. And by the way, what's good about that is you get like all the back end, you get all the money.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to a comedian. I'm in New York now. I used to be in Philadelphia. I'm in New York now. I was talking to a comedian who was or is very successful on TikTok. And he went on a tour with another comedian. He teamed up with another comedian who's similar to him, very successful on TikTok and Instagram. And they sold most of their shows on a tour. And I guess I ran into him 2 days ago, and he had just come off that tour. And I don't know, they did like 30 dates or something crazy. And
Wow.
they did really well. And he was just looking like exhausted and stuff like that. And was just talking about it. And he's like, no, this is success. This is everything I wanted, but it looks nothing like I expected it to be. It was like, I thought it would be like agents setting it up to do comedy clubs or whatever. And I'm like, well, you probably make more money this way. He's like, I make so much more money this way. I was talking to like my friends who go through that thing, and they don't make nearly as much. He's like, but I just didn't expect it to be like this. It's not how it's supposed to be. And I'm like, let me guess. It's a lot of emails, putting out fires. And he's like, that's exactly what it's like.
Yep.
Because that's what comedy is at a certain point. It's a job. And listen, if you're successful enough to hire someone to do all that for you, great on you. But most of us aren't there yet. So we got to deal with it. We got to put out those fires. We got to, I send out, when I'm looking for more shows, I send out like hundreds of emails a day. And if I get like 3 good leads from 100 emails, like that's a successful
You sound like a screenwriter. That's what a screenwriter does too. We send out all these query letters, and then like if we get 1 or 2 back, great, we did something, but it's not that. Now this other comedian that did the tour and stuff, did they drive or did they fly everywhere? Like, do you know how they set it up? Do you have
I assume they flew, because they were like, this was New York and they were doing dates across the Midwest and on the East Coast. So maybe a combination of both, but like he was like, yeah, it's not like comedy. It was like movie theaters and I guess rock venues. I didn't check everything, but yeah, I mean, listen, if you have your audience, that's how you make money. Who cares about comedy clubs or whatever? It's just that's where the money, that's where the business is at a certain level. Is at my level is just doing shows at breweries, shows at wineries, and then shows at like what are they called, like event halls or whatever, and just trying to sell those out. A lot of the audiences are older, so people who still use Facebook, that kind of stuff. And
that's the thing, is I'm not good at Facebook marketing, so like that's probably where I'm gonna have to like get somebody to work with me, because I'm like, I don't want any part of that really. Like,
me neither. I just what I do is I just find like local Facebook groups, flood those. Maybe I'll take like $20 Facebook ad out. I don't even know if it works or not. They're probably just stealing my money. And that kind of stuff. The biggest factor of success is if a venue is great at marketing and they have a great outreach already, that's really what's going to sell a lot of the show. But don't tell the venues that, they don't know that.
No. I mean, it's true because I have a friend of mine out here, Augustino Zoida, who does a lot of breweries and wineries as well. That's like the big thing that he does. And those that, like he said, those are the moneymakers. Now, what's weird for me is like my style of comedy doesn't really match with like wineries and breweries. So it's like a weird thing. So I have to go the other way of like churches, corporate events, private groups, that kind of stuff. That's kind of where my bread and butter is. 55 plus communities, believe it or not, like love me and like love my style.
I mean,
so like, yeah,
a lot of brewery shows outside the city. That's who's there. So I imagine, or at least where I'm in, where I produce most of my shows in like the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware area. So I'm sure you could do well at a lot of shows. Like, are you saying like you're not good with like the hipster, like Brooklyn brewery shows? Yeah. I mean,
I'm not gonna be in LA at a brewery and then like, the bros and the hipsters and they're not gonna get, like when I start talking about kids, they're gonna glaze over and be like, well, I don't know what this guy's talking about. You know what I'm saying? So it's not for me. And then I've also had friends try to get me to do like weed venues, like they, like a lot of weed shops have like other things and I'm like, that's not my vibe, dude. Like I'm not, I have zero weed jokes. Like I'm not gonna, this is not gonna work for you guys. So
I'm sure, but in general, like your brand of comedy probably sells a lot better. Like when I book headliners,
it's easier too. Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for, people like you. I'm not looking for the, the people with the really slick hipster, super smart, it's like, it doesn't really work. I mean, it's just got to be like, I'm kind of learning, like a lot of the places, what they really want is they just want like a really hacky person. And you gotta be like, no, I'm going to show you that comedy is like better than that. I don't want someone like, I don't know, doing cheesy stuff.
Take my wife, please, and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what's hacky at these places, but like, it's just, they just want really fun.
Anyone who does like, what's the deal with type stuff is like, that's like hacky. Like, what's the deal with kids and cell phones now? And you're like, all right, dude,
right. Oh yeah. Like,
back it up, old brother. Like you got.
Yeah. Exactly. That kind of stuff. Yeah. And you got to draw a line, you got to be like, okay, I want to do my type of comedy.
Right.
But they want this type of comedy. So you got to like draw a line between it. At least for me.
I always say my comedy is more like Don Friesen meets Tom Papa, if you're like familiar with those.
Yeah, I know Tom Papa. I love Tom Papa. He
like
seems like the type of guy who can just play to anyone.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I wish I could be like that. You know what I mean? But yeah. I mean, that's what sells. Do you do corporate gigs? You were talking about corporate gigs. Are you like looking to get into like, I don't know, like casinos or cruise ships or that kind of stuff? Or
I probably will want to do cruise ships when my kids leave, because then I can take my wife and we can go and do whatever. But as of right now, I don't really want to. My main focus this year is I've been reworking a set over and over again to try to do dry bar comedy, which I know is like a big deal. So I've cut jokes that I know work. It's just like, I kind of want this to have like a kind of theme. And so that's the hard part, is like, how do I make it thematic with also great jokes that I know like work? And that's the hard part, is like, I have jokes that kind of tie together, but then when I'm like doing it, I don't know why, when I do it, I'm like, this set went great, but then I'm like, yeah, but is it going to work for dry bar? I want to like, so then that's why, as I keep going back over and pulling jokes out and trying new things. So I haven't nailed down. About probably 15 to 18 minutes of it is solid. Like I know this is going to be in it, but the other 10 minutes or so is stuff where I'm like, I could pull that. Maybe I need to write a new, and that's the other problem, is I'll start writing new jokes for it that I'm like, okay, now I got to work this joke out to get it. It's like, it's bad. If I really sat down and did it, I could probably, I have the material. I have an hour of material, no problem. But it's like, I want to tell this story, and all the dry bar stuff, I don't know if you've watched it, is thematic. Like there's a theme to it overall. And so that's what I want to do.
Have you submitted to dry bar at all? Or
I have friends that work with dry bar, that know dry bar people that I've been talking to, and they like know my material, and they're like, you need to get your set though. Like you keep doing this where you go, yeah, I have all this, but you don't have it. You haven't decided. Like the problem is I'm not going to submit or say anything until I committed to this 20. This is the 25 minutes I'm doing, and that's it. There's no way to censor, but don't change because every time I'm like, okay, we're right there, and then I'll go, yeah, you know what? But this joke doesn't really flow well with this joke, and it doesn't. And then I like rip it out, and they're like, so it's like that's my problem right now. Is it's not that I don't have the material, it's not that I can't do the material, it's that I can't commit to material. That's a big problem to have, and I don't want to. I don't want to have it. I'm just having a hard time. So that's my
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. You committing to material because I feel like that's like my hardest when I'm like, oh, what material has the most potential? What new material to work on? If I find something that I really like, I can just commit to it, and then it does get better. But like sometimes I'm like, is there really something there? I did it a few times. There's some interesting stuff, and I guess it's just commitment that
well, I
I
think
need to
my
work on.
well, my other thing I think is I have this mentality of if this is the only special I ever do, right? Say I never get another special again. I want it to be great. And I want to
Yeah.
be able to go back and say, I did a great job here. So that's the hard part, right? Is like where you go, yeah, this joke works. I know it works. It's good. But is it something I'd want? Like if someone came 30 years from now and watched this special, would they go, really? That's all he's got? Like that's what keeps beating me up. That's where I know.
I didn't think of that. That's rough. Yeah, it's like, is this my legacy? But I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to play for your second contract. That's where you make all the money, you know.
Well, I mean, I just like Chris Rock just did his live Netflix thing, and people poo-pooed on it, like, "Oh, he fumbled the closer, and he didn't. This wasn't
Uh,
that strong, and it was a lot of B material." Like you heard all these people saying these things, and I was like, "He did it live too, right?" So that was like an added
mhm.
level to it. I was
Yeah.
like, "Man, see, I don't want that. I don't want where like Chris Rock is one of the greatest comedians of all time, and people are on the internet like, it was okay," and I'm like, "Okay, I can't. That would kill me."
But
Like,
also, you probably is that like comedians who were telling you that because comedians thing.
I mean, I mean, yes, it was mostly Reddit and Twitter and stuff where I'm
Yeah,
reading people's comments crapping on Chris
yeah.
Rock, and I'm going, well, and
Because
I'm
I'll
like,
say,
that's Chris Rock though, so yeah,
yeah, I'll say I like interviewed for a job the other day, and it's just like a bunch of regular people, and they were like all like raving about how great Chris Rock special was. So
yeah.
I feel like it probably did really well with like regular people, not you know cynical Reddit users or whatever.
Well, I feel like I feel like I have to live up to like whatever I say to people on the street or at a show. I don't care. Like, yeah, I'm there to get laughs. But when I walk off stage and that moment a comedian says, "Oh man, that was okay," or like, "Hey, that was a
Yeah,
great set." Those two things give
yeah,
you a different feeling than if after a show, someone in the audience is like, "Great show tonight," and then walks away, right? That like you're like, okay, passing. But your friends or your comedy peers, when they either poo-poo on your set or give you praise your set, that means something different. So that I guess that's where I'm coming from. Is my mentality
yeah,
is like, I don't want to do something where my comedy peers go, "That's all you got? That's all you did?" Like,
yeah.
okay, a monkey could have done that, James. You know, and I'm like,
I'm trying, like I'm literally trying to like the most insecure I ever am on stage is at an open mic with just comedians in the audience.
yeah.
I'm really trying to like just want like you know real people, I call them, like not cynical, uh, brainwashed by open mic comedy people. But it's so hard. It's like, yeah, really like funny people you respect, you or me at least. Sometimes I just like really want them, like, I look, hey, are they watching my set? Oh no, they stepped out for a second or
Yep.
whatever. And it's like, oh, bummer, I had a really good set. Or like if you suck, you're like, oh, thank God they stepped out or whatever. It's so rough, and I don't think that's helping me at all, but that's how life goes. You
No,
want
that's
people.
that's the thing. That's how we feel as a comedians because we're there's a small group of us, right? There's not that many
Mm,
comedians. We like to think that like, oh, there's a lot more of us than there are, but there's not, and we know a lot of the same people, and so you feel like, oh, if I bomb at this show or I do a terrible job, and this person sees it, then they're going to tell that person's going to know, and then like it'll come back to you. And I've literally had this where I did a show one time, and I tried a new joke, and I was like, oh, that didn't really go well, and I kind of like was like, ah, that sucked. I walked off stage, and I remember a comedian saying, "Man, that joke would be better if you did X, Y, and Z." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Like, that was really helpful, like in my mind." And then I got like a message from another comedian friend who wasn't even in the area was like, "Hey man, I heard this joke that you did like didn't do too well. You want to talk about it?" And I was like,
What?
"Are you kidding me right now?" Like I was like, "What is going on?" Like I don't
Well,
like, yeah,
hey, I heard from the grapevine that one of your jokes sucks. You want to tell me more
not
about it?
jokes, but like a friend of mine who's like, "Hey man, I know we talked about this joke. What do you
Yeah,
think? Like, you want to talk about it or whatever?" But
yeah,
like they heard about it. They're not even in the show area. They're like in
yeah.
another part of the state, and I'm getting a text message 20 minutes later, like, "Hey, I heard your joke did." I was like, "Wow, LA man." Well, it's the thing is, everyone knows me, and I like.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. I put myself out there so much that people know me. So then there's like this expectation of like, oh, you're talking to people about comedy. You're talking about comedy. You're telling people what to do.
Oh.
You should be, you should be
Oh.
Jerry Seinfeld. Why are you telling me when you bombed a joke, type thing. I've gotten that. Like,
Oh.
I saw you, like,
Yeah.
I got like those messages like, I saw your set. Not that funny. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. They want because they're like, oh, that's the guy from the clean comedy pot. I want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
tear him down. Oh, I knew he wasn't what I
Yeah.
knew he was nothing or whatever.
And,
Yeah.
and, and I always preface everything with like, look, I don't know everything. I'm not the best comedian in the world. I'm not the funniest guy in the world. I know that. I'm trying just like everyone else. Everyone has good days. Everyone has bad days.
Yeah.
You come to some shows and I murder, and you come to some shows
Yeah.
and it's okay. But I've never had a show where I just like ate it for the whole time. Well, maybe when I
Oh
started
yeah.
out, when I was starting and like doing open mics, I bombed like nobody's
Yeah.
business. But that's everybody, So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
just so you know.
I've had like really good comedians come up to me like or like we've done shows together and like, oh yeah, like you were pretty funny. Like usually you don't do that well. I'm like, you mean at open mics when I'm like, just trying out
Working materials.
bullshit? Like
Yeah.
I thought we were all smart enough to know to not use that as an example. Um
I know it'd be like going to like Mr. Olympia guys while they're in
yeah,
the gym, and they're like, "You don't look that cut right now." They're like, "Yeah, it's the off season, and
yeah,
I'm working out to get there, guy. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you
yeah.
harassing me now?"
Because I
Yeah,
need to bomb like crazy, like to get something. Like I feel like I have more of the bomb. Some people come with like pretty succinct jokes.
yeah,
I don't. Like I come with a story and I got to tell that story, figure out what gets reaction, write jokes in that part. You know what I mean? So it's when I'm starting brand new, it's real rough. And so I get a little insecure about that. But I've also, the other thing that I've had people do to me and I've done to people is where you tell them like, oh, that joke's really good. Or someone you admire says, oh, that joke's really good.
yeah,
And you stick with it way longer than you should. Cause like, oh, so-and-so told me that's a good joke, but you keep bombing with it and you're not going anywhere with it. You're not like adding new interesting stuff to it, but you're like,
yeah.
oh, but this comedian I really admire said they like it. And
Yeah, I had a joke when I first started. Like, I had like a comedy coach who wanted me to do like an Andrew Dice Clay type character. Like that was like he teaches character comedy. He's
yeah,
pretty well known, and
yeah.
so used to do this joke, and it would always kill. But my wife hated the joke so
Uh,
much. She was like, "Do not do that joke anymore. I hate this joke. Do not do that joke." So I had to like drop it. And I remember somebody seeing another comedian like 2 years later, and I'd done a show with them, and I used to do that joke. They're like, "Hey, you don't do that joke anymore." And I go, "Yeah, because my wife would murder me if I did that joke, or whatever." He was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I get that joke, yeah." And it was like a pretty misogynistic kind of like joke.
yeah.
'Cause, if you're doing like an Andrew Dice Clay type
Stuck on
character,
my goo. I don't know.
yeah. Oh, exactly, yeah.
I'm trying to think of what Andrew Dice
You
Clay.
just, yeah.
What him being misogynistic? That doesn't sound like Andrew Dice Clay at all.
But yeah, so like that's a problem. Like my first 6 months or year of comedy was me doing this character that wasn't me. It wasn't me, but it was
Yeah,
like this comedy coach had talked me into doing this, and
yeah,
I did well with it. But every time I left stage, I felt like, what did I just do up there? That was gross. Like that was, ugh,
yeah,
I don't want to be that guy. And
yeah.
so I think it's about 6 months or whatever. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just start over. Like I'm just gonna not gonna do any of those jokes. I'm gonna start over. And then I did that, and it went fine after that. I was like, okay, so I don't need this weird character that is rude to his wife and talks down to his kids and like only cares about himself type thing, which is kind of what they wanted. So I was like,
Mhm.
that's not me as a person
Yeah,
though. Like you got to be true to yourself. So it's
yeah.
interesting.
It's hard, yeah, because when you're starting out, especially in open mics, that's what's getting reactions is like
Yeah.
edgy crap that, like I have jokes. I'm like, oh, I have this like normal joke about like my job and my day, and it does well with like regular audiences, but with comedians, they're just like,
getting high and doing something crazy, man. What's wrong with you? Talk about your Tinder dates. And you're like, bro, I don't do any of that stuff. Like,
yeah. Well, even Tinder dates has gotten like kind of
now it's
like
got
frowned
hacky.
on.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's just they just want like shocking, crazy stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm not, I'm not shocking and crazy guy. I'm not. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it can be interesting sometimes.
Well, that's now since it was the beginning of the year or whatever, when you went to open mics, did you see like the influx of like wannabe new comedians that happen at the beginning of every year? Kind of like when people going back to like making the New Year's resolution to go to the gym. Did you see that? I experienced that this year for a while. I haven't done it in a while, but I was like, I need to go back and get back in the mic thing and kind of like work on things because I work on it with friends and go on do stuff. But did you experience that? And how was that seeing that,
Well,
making that connection again? Like, oh, here's the 100
mhm.
new people that think they're going to be comedians this year.
Yeah, so I actually moved to New York at the beginning of this year, so I didn't know anyone or anything, so I couldn't really tell. But I'll say, really, the biggest change I've ever seen, and I've been doing comedy for like 6 years, so a medium amount of time. I don't know.
It's that's decent. Most people quit at year
Yeah,
3 to 5, somewhere there.
yes. Um, they COVID was really like it cleared out like a lot of the and Trent, like it got rid of a lot of people who had been doing it forever and just were looking for an excuse to quit. And it brought like a lot of like new, interesting people who either A started doing it online, which was very interesting, and just a lot of people who had been wanting to do it for years. And they're like, oh, the world almost ended. I'm following my dreams. So that was like a huge, I don't know what it was like in LA, but that was just a huge monumental shift by the time like we had fully opened up from COVID. I'm like, things are radically different. It's a very different. What's popular is very. I just gotta like gotta kind of like figure out my way again. And I'm like all of a sudden like, oh, I'm like the old guy now. Like I'm in my 30s all of a sudden, and all these like 22-year-olds who are like really young and charismatic and actually kind of good at writing jokes, who have been learning from, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. I'm like, oh, I got to learn to like exist in an environment with these people now.
Yeah. No, it was weird. I remember seeing that and then like talking to some people and they're like, yeah, I started on Zoom, during the pandemic. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And that was
Yeah.
all, you're right. That's how a lot of people started because they were like, well, I lost my job. The world seems to be ending and I have never done the things that I've wanted to do. Now I'm going to try them. Right. And so you got these influx of people who did that. And I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that not that I'm glad we had COVID, but I'm glad that we had that moment in time for human beings to go, everything could go away tomorrow.
Yeah.
So maybe I should like care less about all this BS and go do the things I've always wanted to do because it could all end tomorrow. That was such a great human moment for people. And I see people who I've seen quit their jobs and do new stuff or whatever. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, I mean, with COVID, anything could happen. And I was like, that's such a great mindset. I wish that we had that all the time. And I know in 5 years from now, people will forget about COVID. They'll like forget that moment and they'll be back to that grind mentality.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to the way it was. But for these next like 2 or 3 years, people are really going to be like, man, I lost everything, or I could have lost everything, or I lost my job and blah, 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 blah. And all these things.
Yeah.
Now I should do something. And I love that, to see that. That's why I like, not that I like the anti-work movement per se, but like if you ever see the anti-work subreddit or whatever, where they're like, you know what, dude, your boss is a jerk. Find something else. Who cares? Like life is short. And I'm like, that's advice that you would not normally get. People will be like, well, you got to pay your bills, buddy. Like,
well, and also I've been around long enough where like I see people who did do everything right and do the good job. And then at 40, they're like, it all betrayed me. Like they just kicked me out the door. I don't really have a career anymore. So it's like, there's no like, it's just going to betray you for the most part in the long run. So you just gotta do, it's like doing new or old material. Just do the new material, because there's nothing worse than bombing with old material. Just do the new material and bomb with that. Might as well. It'll get you a little bit more. So and another cultural thing I've noticed, and it might be different in like LA or even New York, bigger cities, but when I started off, and it was like losers did comedy,
Yeah.
and now it's like, and I think this was like before COVID, but COVID exasperated it, I guess, is like now it's like people with like engineering degrees who are just like good jobs, respectable job, like, it's, I don't know, it just seems like it's more mainstream, possibly because of like TikTok or the internet, but it's not as much total losers doing comedy
Well,
anymore.
it's also not like
it's
you
like
have
the
to.
cool kids.
Well, it's also like you don't have to hide it from people, because there are the people like,
Yeah.
well, if I do stand up, I don't want like someone to see my stand up and get me fired or whatever. And now it's like
Yeah.
there's a bajillion people on TikTok doing the same thing. Who cares? Like now it's like, as long as you're not being a racist or misogynist, or whatever,
Right.
no one's really going to care. But if you go and do regular stand up
Yeah.
and it's none of those things, your bosses are going to be like, "You're fired, Bill. I saw you on
Yeah.
TikTok." You're like, I mean,
And
unless you're
also,
doing your job.
I think like it didn't used to be like athletes and UFC fighters doing
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden it's like that, thanks to like, I don't know, Joe Rogan and stuff like that.
Well, no,
So,
didn't Tom Brady just say he was going to go start doing stand up?
right.
I think. Why, Tom Brady? You've already dominated the NFL. Leave us alone, okay? We're
Yeah.
trying to do something with that. Now you're going to be like trying to sell out a thing. It's like, well, Tom Brady bumped you. You got to leave.
Dude, I totally want to see like the video of Tom Brady going, so like, my family's crazy. My my wife, she's got a new modeling contract. I just want to see him like, what the hell is he going to talk about?
I hope he addresses kissing his son on the lips. That's the joke I want to hear him talk about.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Defending that on public TV, where you're like, hey, I kiss my sons on the lips. Like, but why?
It's because I love them. I don't know.
He's gonna have a good reason. And he's, what the thing is, Tom Brady's not gonna write his own jokes. Let's be honest. He's gonna have people working with him. He's gonna hire a bunch of like either really good comedians that or like B-level comedians, feature people that come and write, and TV writers to work with him to write jokes. And Tom Brady, if you need a writer, you hit me up, dude. Like I'll write jokes.
He's gonna like hire Nate Bargatze to write him a bunch of jokes.
Oh gosh. We'll never get a job. It'll be Nate Bargatze and Tom Brady touring all over America.
Yeah, Jeff Ross is like writing him roast jokes and stuff.
Actually, I would love to see Tom Brady roast somebody. Like that'd be great.
Weren't they supposed to do a roast? The first time that he retired, they like announced that he was going to do a roast, but then he came back, so they canceled the roast.
Yeah.
But so now they could do it, but now he's like divorced, so that might like make it harder because he doesn't want to hear a bunch of divorced jokes anymore. So
it's a roast, bro. Everything's fair game in a roast.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's like. Yeah. I always want to do roast battle. Have you ever done roast battle? Have you done the roast battle?
I have not. I've gotten a lot of opportunities, but I don't know. First off, I'm like a sensitive person. I feel like it might hurt my feelings. And I don't have a lot of experience writing jokes like that, but have you done it?
No, I always want to do it. I just don't want to do it against a random person. Like I know you're supposed to like know whoever you're doing. I just feel like either A, it would unlock the too mean side of me, like from being in the military and stuff, where like we really would roast each other.
Oh,
and it got like mean, bro, like super mean.
Yeah.
Like I've seen dudes like grown men in tears leaving a room after people roasted them. So either it would go that way, or like I would be too sensitive and I would be the ones that got my feelings hurt for something that somebody said. So it's like, if I know a person, like me and my comedy friends will roast each other and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But I think if I had to go against somebody I didn't know, and if I like got too mean, I feel like the crowd would turn on me and be angry. So it's a weird, I don't know. I've written roast jokes for people. I've worked on a ton of like roasty type stuff and whatever. But I think if I did it myself, I don't know. Either I'd feel bad about it, like me taking the roast, or I'd be angry and hurt somebody else's feelings, and I wouldn't want to do that either. So it's kind of like a weird thing. I do want to do like a roast for my birthday one day, where like all my friends come and we do a roast, because that would be okay. Like there are certain things that I know we could talk about and joke about, because that's what we do anyways, that it wouldn't bother us. But just a random person, I feel like I would be.
Yeah.
Although I love roast battle, like it's one of my favorite things to watch. And you go, ooh, that was mean, but like it's all in good fun. But I feel like there's a meanness to it that like could hurt somebody's feelings. I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yeah, there was like a bit of a scandal in Philadelphia, I don't know, a year or two ago, where they roast got like really popular after the pandemic, and like everyone they were doing a roast once a week, and then they were doing a monthly roast or whatever. And yeah, there was this whole controversy because they would like video the roast and put it on YouTube, and they edited out a joke, and then the person who was getting roasted was like, yeah, they made this joke about how, I was a monkey or something, and they're like, yeah, it's a roast, but like that wasn't cool, and then they cut it out, and the producers didn't keep me in the loop. It was this whole thing, and it like
Wow.
ended the roast careers of many people that day. So
That's
you
the
got
thing
to be
is,
careful. I don't know anything. I'm just like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
I guess there is a lot. I mean, it makes sense there's a line, but
Yeah,
um,
and that's the thing is like if you but you won't know the line until you cross that line, right? Like
yeah,
you could do the same joke about me, and then if
yeah,
I did the same joke,
yeah,
it's the same exact joke, but
yeah,
because I use the word black or whatever it is,
yeah,
then it's a racist joke, right? And it could
right.
be the same exact thing. We're saying the same thing, but the color of the person could be the
Yeah,
defining factor there, and that's the weird part where it's like, all
yeah.
right, so that's why I haven't done it either because it's like
Oh,
I don't want to hurt one again. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want my feelings hurt, and I don't want to say
yeah,
something that's going to come off differently than I intended it. So I'm
yeah.
kind of careful about that stuff.
I just realized, yeah, I mean, it's now no one cares, no one cares after a while. But I remember I was getting, because I had the person who said that like booked on a show, so I had to like get them off the show. I had to,
Oh
I had to
wow,
just say like, the timing's not right now. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, I
yeah.
can be a political, I'm actually pretty good at that. I'm like, yeah, the timing's not right, but we'll explore options in the future. I don't know, but yeah, it was, I don't know, it's what I just don't want to be involved with other people's drama is essentially the issue. I
Yeah,
mean, I love watching roasts are fun.
they're
It's
so fun.
the mean stuff, like where they're like, oh, you look like you're an AIDS patient who's about to commit suicide. I'm like, that's mean, but it's like that's not personal. Like I remember
Right.
when I was like 2 years into comedy, I was like so insecure. I remember someone made like a joke. They basically their whole stand-up set was just like roasting everyone at the open mic. And one of their jokes was like, you're not actually funny. You just make people so awkward that they feel like they have to laugh. And I was like, I was so like, I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I do. I was so like, oh my, like I was like, that's genius, but I'm also like, everything I've been doing is a lie or whatever.
Yeah.
So like those are the jokes that like
The
scare me the
existential
most.
crisis happens because of a
Yeah.
roast joke. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like that's true. I feel like that's exactly how those things happen. Well, where can people find you? Where can they find your jokes? Are you going to put up more street comedy bits and stuff?
I for now I'm thinking about doing it again, but for now I just have the main post, the main YouTube video. It's about 4 minute video about doing street comedy. I'm posting like TikToks and stuff, but they're all
Okay.
from the video. But check out my YouTube channels where the main thing is. Like I have the street comedy. I have a lot of videos about like the comedy business. I have one video where like I follow for like a year and a half of me writing like a 5 minute story. And it's like from the beginning to the end of it.
Oh, I
That's
like
pretty
that.
cool. I went to Texas, did comedy. I went to Cincinnati, did comedy. Videos about that.
What part of
And
Texas did you do comedy in?
I went to Austin, and I also went to Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio. Um,
Now, which was your favorite of those four cities? Because I've done San Antonio,
okay,
and I liked it. It was fine. Everything. I mean, a good show.
yeah,
So,
I
what was?
I liked Houston was my favorite because Houston's like the it's like the biggest. It's like a big city that I'm
Yeah.
used to. Austin, I actually like had a tough time with. I'll be honest.
Wow.
A lot of people love it, but I don't know. I didn't feel great about Austin. It was probably the influx of all the like Joe Rogan
L.A.
fans coming in, or I don't. It was just I just felt it was like a horrible environment. There's a lot of like edgy bros at the open mic. It's very like urban sprawl feel. It was just difficult for me, I guess. So that
There
was
you
the
go.
most like surprised I thought.
Now, how'd you like San Antonio? I think it's a chill city. It's like one of my favorite places.
Yeah, so San Antonio I think got hit like the hardest of all Texas cities by COVID because like there was not like this was like late 2020, so there was like not much going on there at
Oh yeah.
all. So I had fun. There was an open mic. I had fun. It was like I just really went to one open mic there where like some young kid brought like his sister and like five of her friends. So I just did crowd work with them, and that was really fun. But I didn't really experience San Antonio properly, I think.
All right. So James McAliney on, is it on? That's what it is on YouTube. Just at James
Yes.
McAliney, all that stuff. Go check it out. I watched that video. You guys are gonna like love it. It's really cool. I'm gonna watch some more of these videos. I didn't know there was a. I want to watch the I hate booking celebrity comedians one.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and your Austin one.
That
I don't know what comedian this is about, but I'm assuming it was one of those people where you're like, ah, man, they had like all these things they wanted.
Yeah, so that was just that was like kind of my learning about the comedy business. The gist of it is like, don't book famous comedians. Like, that's not good for business. You know what I mean? You have to spend
Yep.
too much money. You lose too much money. I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of like, I want to book a famous comedian. So like I booked a famous comedian, they pulled out. So I start like trying to book all the, like I DM'd and like emailed
Oh,
a ton of famous. They all wrote back, by the way. But it was like someone had to like pull me out of it, and like, bro, what are you doing? The most you can possibly make from the show is $600, and you're
yeah.
promising $500 to like all these comedians. It was just it was like a learning experience for me. Like, hey,
Eh,
don't chase fame. That's
Yep.
disgusting and not good business wise.
What you do is if you want a celebrity comedian that, and you're like in LA or New York or whatever, find someone that's local, that's around there, that's not touring right now, that's maybe working on stuff, and offer them like $100 to come do the headlining spot and give them, tell them 30 to 45 minutes. Let them do it. Let
Yeah.
that be a draw. They'll come do it in the city. If you wanted to travel outside of that zone, that's where it starts to get pricey, and that's the
Yeah.
problem if they have to
Mhm.
travel. So, because I've gotten great comedians like Dwayne Perkins and Don Friesen and Preacher Lawson, like all these people that are like, people who are paying thousands of dollars to go see for 100, 150, 200
Yeah.
bucks to come do a show. And it's like, because they're in town, they're here
Yeah.
right now. They're going to come do it. I mean,
Right.
look, and they're going to leave your show and go to the Improv or the Comedy Store or whatever and get their $15 or $25 for
Yeah.
doing their 5 or 10 minutes that they work out material there. And
Yeah.
you just gave them $100 or whatever, So yeah,
Right. And they got to do way more time, which is probably more valuable to them. So
yeah,
yes,
in front of a real
that's the
crowd that's there to see and probably would be happy to see them, anyways. And they kind of get to be like the name that holds that show together type thing. So
that's the smart way to do it. Yeah. The way you can see my video, the way I was
I'm gonna
doing it,
watch it.
not smart.
But you have to learn, and that's the thing is I think a lot of people go, and then the worst part is when people are like in Arizona or Nevada or Colorado or whatever go, oh, I need a headliner. Well, you're pulling from LA or New York, so it's going to cost you money to travel them there, to give them a place a room and board, and then to pay them for the show, right? So you have to.
Yeah.
I get reached out all the time about private and corporate gigs, and they go, hey, we'd love to have you come do a show. It's like, okay, what's your budget for airfare and travel and for lodging? Do you have those? And then what is your rate for paying for my time to do the show? And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, we have a small budget of $400. I'm like, well, I can't fly to, North Dakota
Right.
and get a hotel and do a show for $400. Like I logistically cannot do that.
Yeah.
Even if I took Spirit Airlines and stayed in the dumpiest hotel you have in town, I'm not even gonna break even. I'm still gonna be behind
Yeah.
on stuff.
Yeah. $400, but yeah, you gotta book something local. You gotta,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
you
what I end
gotta,
up saying is like, if there's a comedy club close to you, I would recommend talking to the comedy club and see if they have comedians that meet the specifications that you're looking for. Unfortunately,
yeah.
I can't, and I'm sorry, So that's how I usually do it, and I feel bad doing that. But I'm hoping that gives some other local comedian $400 that I wouldn't have been able to get. So it's all good.
Yeah. And you don't have to pay local comedians $400. You can pay them 200 or
Yeah.
and keep some of that money for your profit or whatever.
Yep. There you go. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast again. Everybody go James McAliney on YouTube. I think that's also on Instagram. All those things, right? Is it just at James? There you
Yes.
go. I'll put it all in the show notes too, so you guys can check it out. Thanks again, James. Great talking to you. It was great to learn about all the things that you've been doing. It's pretty awesome. And I know comedy business is hard, but guys, that's what we do. If you want to be a comedian, there's a lot of work to it. And I'm gonna go check out your videos. Thanks again. And everybody have a good one. Please like and subscribe on my stuff, like and subscribe on James' stuff, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.